I have a quorum.
Perfect. All right, now I have everybody. Okay. Okay, we're now streaming live on YouTube, according to the note on my screen. Great. All right, so we will call this August 20th meeting of the REDCO Board of Directors to order, and we will start with the approval of the minutes of the July 16th meeting. Everybody should have those, or should have received those in their meeting packet. I would accept a motion from a board member to approve the minutes of this meeting.
So move.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections that anyone would like to note? Hearing none.
Dana,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Maria.
I just needed to know who second. I heard like three voices.
Oh, okay. Thank you. DT moved it, and I did hear a couple of voices. So it was either Sergio or Keith, I think. Which one of you felt strongly that you seconded it? Keith. Okay, Keith seconded it. Thank you. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. Okay, so we have a few items to discuss here. I had received a note, though, at one point with some questions about the budget and requesting that, if necessary, we have the opportunity to go into executive session. In order to make that easier, I would like to propose that we slightly rearrange the agenda and put the budget discussion as the last item. So if we do have to go into executive session, we could excuse the staff.
I
Does
was going to
anybody?
suggest the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
They can swap with me if they want.
Okay. So why don't we just rearrange the agenda so that that item will be last, and then we'll move on to the next item, which would be the Seisenbacher Economic Development funding, and I believe Tracy is going to take us through that.
Gotta unmute myself first. All right, just a little background on Seisenbacher. Seisenbacher is a manufacturing company located on Humboldt Street. They originally came to the city, I want to say last year, for a loan, but at that point, they weren't eligible to receive funding, or they were turned down. I got a call that I should look at them again, and so I went back and took a look at them and visited. So again, the background on them is they started in 1934. I'm not going to read the entire slides because I hate reading slides, but this is a little bit of the background of them and how they came to be in Rochester. So if you can go to the next slide, Fred. Seisenbacher, they're full turnkey interior rail service. Everything that's on the inside of a train, they build, and they build it right there on Humboldt Street, aside from a few things like some chairs, but everything that you can touch inside of a rail, they build. So again, from the picture, you can see a lot of the stuff that they do build. Go to the next slide. The relocation to the USA. Rochester actually bid to have them come there. Come to Rochester, we won the bid, and that's how they ended up on Humboldt Street. Since then, they expanded to include a few more vendors who use them for their interior parts. And I believe it was last year at Humboldt, they acquired an additional 20,000 square feet, and that would allow them to house more inventory and do more things. The parent company to this date has invested 9.4 million. The problem that they ran into with financing in the past was the way that they structured their working the cycle, the operating cycle. Traditionally, they would take on all of the bill outs. All of that money would be locked in inventory, and then they wouldn't receive any of the money until after the parts were shipped. They ran into a little bit of trouble and they were cash short. In February or March of this year, right before COVID, they had restructured some of their debt in the way that they did their billing. So that allowed them to free up capital, get inventory, and work things through the cycle, work things through their operating cycle. But because they're looking to expand and they're looking to hire more people to keep up with pace, that's why they came to REDCO for a $250,000 working capital loan. We did run into a couple of problems because the way that the financing was set up was factored. So there were some claims on the receivables. During the UCC, and Tim pointed that out to us, there was a problem with the UCC codes. They have sent me an email of a cash check to the CSC who filed that UCC filing, and that will be cleared up. I have the email between the lawyers, so that will come off of their the lien on the receivables, and so REDCO will have the first position on the new collateral, on the new inventory, and it's a lot of inventory that's there for us to put a lien on if we do this loan. The next slide. So they're looking to add 60 more jobs with that additional space that they bought right there on Humboldt or that they leased. The reason why we looked at Seisenbacher is because they're looking to hire more minorities, and this is a specialist field. We don't have a lot of welders or machinists, and they want to train the new people to come in and take some of those jobs. So out of the 60 jobs that they're looking to create, 10 of those will be Rochester jobs, and that's right around the same criteria of the one job per $30,000 that gets loaned out. And they will definitely increase their minority staff. Evelyn and I had a chance to walk through the factory, and we did see the additional space that they took on. They do have a little bit of minority staff, and so now we're looking to work with them also to help with the training of some of the minorities, so that they can come in and get the required certificates. Next slide. So looking for a $250,000 loan for working capital to increase capacity. Again, there were some things that came up in the USC search. They did clear those up. There are some of the inventory that has a lien on it, but those are prepaid things for some of their vendors. But they restructured the way that they did it so all of their money wouldn't be caught up in inventory, and they had to wait for the receivables. That's what caused a lot of their cash problems.
Tracy, we had a couple questions that I don't think have been addressed yet.
Okay.
This is a side-by-side cash flow financing. And I'm not sure how, you're a fledgling organization. How do you have the capacity to do these calculations? You're calculating two moving targets simultaneously. I don't know how you're going to accomplish that. I mean, that's a tremendous administrative task to be following their inventory on a daily basis with basically two liens on the cash flow. And you've tried to isolate the cash flows, but number one, I don't know how to do that. And I don't know in your organization who's going to run those daily calculations. I mean, maybe Keith can jump in on factoring cash flows, but there's two side-by-side liens. That's a big task.
Well, one of the liens are going to drop off.
One of three, so there's still going to be another one left.
Talking to Mitch in the way that we would go about looking at it, wouldn't be a daily thing. We would have to go in there and look quarterly to make sure that everything is okay. But I don't think it's a daily thing for REDCO to go in.
It's the aggregate of daily entries. Inventory obviously turns over quickly, goes in and out on two different schedules. So even though the calculation is only made quarterly, it's still the aggregate of daily ins and outs.
But we would require them to mail in. I don't think we'd have to look at this daily.
I mean, sounds like a lot.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure if it's a daily thing that we have to go in there and look at daily. If we look at this even monthly and just try and take a look, we should be able to catch some of those things.
Right. And the second question we had is in cash flows typically of this nature, we see a corporate guarantee. Is the parent not guaranteeing this step?
The parent is not guaranteeing this step, but they've restructured their billing. They do have a lot of collateral that holds value.
But not collateral for us.
Collateral there, yes. On the second loan, once one of the blanket loans drops, then it's my understanding that the new inventory has no lien. It's kind of like the same deal we did with the dentist, where the new inventory, we can lean on that.
Tim, you and Tracy, as I read through this, and Tracy, very nice job on the presentation, because there were some information gaps for me coming into this, and I think there are. This is a lot of work for $250,000. I'll just put it out there. I think
Okay.
Tim highlighted the administrative part of this. Is the parent sort of at their funding limit here? Because $250 on this large balance sheet feels de minimis. But if it's tied to helping them hire 10 new Rochester residents, I think we should focus the conversation there. Tim, to your point, I mean, the easiest thing on the credit decision is to almost, if we don't want to take that administrative burden on, I think we almost have to consider it as an unsecured loan. And that would be how I might recommend that you look at this, because administratively to monitor monthly AR and inventory agings, most banks wouldn't do that for this small size of a loan. And on top of that, trying to separate customer deposits, progress payments out, it just, there's a big, to do this right, I think it would be, you'd want to document it up front, put your controls in place, and have the back end built out. So I would just suggest, if we want to go forward with this, we focus less on the collateral part of it and more on the benefit to the company, benefit to the city, and the residents. I'll leave my professional or my expertise there and ask if anyone else has any other questions. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, Tracy, or if anyone else, as they read through that, if that makes a little more sense. And Tim, I guess at that point you'd just kind of take a GSA and not hope, but just have a GSA to fall back on.
That's a simpler approach, right?
And just know what it is. No, it's
to the point that you're making, Keith. So we're talking about a total project of 9.650, and they're going to provide 9.4 of that, right? So I agree with your comment about it being relatively de minimis, and we do actually get some benefit in terms of jobs out of it. So I think it's for the investment that we're being asked to provide. The job opportunity is worth it.
Yeah, and I would just scale the work accordingly to the 250. Do it because of the benefit, but scale the work associated with it.
Right.
Yep. Tracy, we have these conversations. We have these conversations. They're very common in banking. So this isn't unique to this proposal. Scaling the work is never easy sometimes.
All right.
The one thing we need
Sergio has a question, I believe.
Okay.
Sergio?
Sorry.
The question that I have is, do we know how are they going to go about the training for the welders or whatever they need?
I'm looking to work with him in the county to put together a team where they can make sure that they train the minority workers to come in and get the certificates. So
we need to make
the reason why I say that, because there might be opportunities through Rochester Works, okay, and MCC, and there might be even some funding for that. Okay, so I suggest I chair the board of Rochester Works, and I'll be glad to. I mean, you know who they are anyway, so you can contact them directly. But you may ask if there's funding, maybe some funding for that training.
So
BT?
one of the things we need to make sure is that if they don't hire city workers, train and hire city workers, then that there are penalties. Because we found in the past, at least in Newark, that people were making all these promises, but they didn't materialize. So we started being very vigilant about monitoring them to make sure that those employees were hired.
Yeah, I'm going to send you after the meeting, I'll send you a commitment letter. I actually added 2 items in there that weren't there. This is an item that's drafted by law, a commitment to the loan. There are a number of items in there. That's about 2 pages. There are default clauses in there. And 2 of them that I added was minority workforce goals to work off what the city put in place in 2018, which is 20% a minority, 6% women. And the other one, best efforts for MWBE, just following what was established in 2018, which myself, Dana, and others were involved in passing on the city side.
Thanks, Dan.
I mean, of course, I don't want to leave the lawyer out because Tim, I mean, ultimately he wrote it up, but I mean, we were all, it was a collaborative effort. Let me just say that.
Great.
Okay, are there any further questions on the presentation? Thank you, Tracy, for a very well written and comprehensive presentation. Okay, hearing no further questions, I would accept a motion to approve funding for a loan for Seisenbacher.
Move it.
Okay, it's been moved by Michael and seconded by Sergio. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. Okay, very good, thank you. This is a great reuse of a building that was vacated when Harris moved their operations out of the city, and we were, very concerned that this space would go empty for a very long time. So Seisenbacher has been a great addition. The next item on the agenda is Greater Rochester Enterprise. I don't know if there's anybody here that is unfamiliar with Greater Rochester Enterprise, but in the event that anybody is unfamiliar with it, there was a handout included in the package. For those of you who are not as familiar with it, you know that Greater Rochester Enterprise has been around for a great many years now. They were originally formed to be a regional job attractor. We were finding in the region that very often if a site selector showed up and was looking for a place to perhaps create some kind of major industry, they didn't really know who to talk to. They would come to the city, they would go to the county, they would talk to people and visit Rochester, they would talk maybe to the Rochester Downtown Development Corporation, and they were kind of just going all over the community and not really having a central point. So GRE was created to be that central point. They are really the primary point of contact for any organization or company that's looking for a site in the Greater Rochester region. So the good news is that they're looking across the region. The less good news is they're not really focused specifically on the city of Rochester. And so we really see REDCO as the organization that will be 100% focused on the city of Rochester. But having said that, it's still important to have GRE because they get the national and international contacts from businesses that are looking to locate in the region. And then I think it's important for REDCO to have a seat at the table so that when those discussions are taking place, there's someone there who specifically has the city of Rochester and a focus on the city of Rochester in the room. So typically what has happened over the years that GRE has been formed is the city of Rochester has paid this requested $50,000 a year to the Greater Rochester Enterprise. As REDCO was being essentially spun off as a separate entity, when we did our budget, when I did my budget for this year, and when I met with the mayor to go through our budget, she specifically said, this item that you have been paying for really belongs to REDCO now. So I said, okay, great, I'll negotiate that with REDCO. So here we are. The item is something that I do believe is important and necessary, and we were directed to take it out of our budget, which I did, but we're being asked to include it in REDCO's budget. So the information that you have here was provided by Matt Hurlbut, who's the head of GRE. He's provided some details going back over a number of years of the job and business investment that has taken place as a result of GRE's efforts, of the companies that have chosen to locate in Rochester or in the Rochester region as a result of GRE's efforts. And as you look down in the column that says located in City of Rochester, you'll see that actually a very, very large number of these companies have chosen to locate within the city. Part of that is because a lot of the area that these companies have been looking at is Eastman Business Park, which is mostly in the city of Rochester. But another thing that I think has been very interesting, and as we've seen with some of these companies, like Cloud Checker or Live Tiles and some of the other companies, is that they specifically said, we want to be in the center city. We want to be downtown. Our workers, our younger workforce, they don't want to be isolated in some suburban office park where you can't walk to anything. There are no services nearby. They want to be in center city. So it's actually worked to our advantage in many of these cases to be in the room. But typically what happens is when a site selector contacts them, they round everybody up and get us all in one room and say, all right, here's what is being proposed, and what would each of you be able to contribute to help make this happen. So we would typically, from the city, identify something. Perhaps REDCO would identify something, funding or other assistance. The county would throw something in. Typically RG&E is in the room and they throw something in, but everybody comes up, Empire State Development from the state. So everybody comes in with what they think their best offer might be. We package all of that up. GRE takes it back to the company, and then they make a decision. So I think it's an important thing for us to be involved in. The proposal is that as a result of this investment, there would be a seat on the board for the mayor of the city of Rochester or her designee, and for the CEO of REDCO. So Bea would continue. He's been a representative on the REDCO board for as long as he was here as commissioner, and would continue in that role as the CEO of REDCO. And then the mayor would designate who the second person would be. They would deliver, as they've proposed here, at least 15 out-of-region opportunities per year that include sites within the city of Rochester. They would provide us with quarterly reports, and as you've seen from the results that were identified here, they've actually done a very good job at getting Rochester out there. A lot of times when these site selectors are looking for places, Rochester isn't even on their radar. And through the work that GRE has been doing, both by attending some of the national, international trade shows, but also in putting information out into the hands of the various site selection organizations, they do a very good job of making sure that Rochester is at least, on the table. There are a couple of really, really big opportunities that are not listed here, and if any of those pan out, we're looking at potentially, many hundreds, if not more than 1,000 jobs in the city of Rochester. So going forward, there is huge opportunity here, and I would hope that we could find a way to continue working with them. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a
DT?
question.
Okay, DT, and then Michael.
I was just surprised to see that since REDCO was paying for this, that we're providing a seat for the mayor. Seems like we should get some quid pro quo for that. Or the mayor kicks in something.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. I think that yeah, I don't know. We can certainly push back on that if we like, but
Well, maybe just a little friendly discussion.
okay, Mike.
All I was gonna say is that this is tremendous. I mean, based upon their efforts so far this year, and we agree that it's 50,000, it breaks out to roughly $60 per job.
You're a little muffled.
I said, I think this is a tremendous opportunity, and I'm really impressed by the work that REDCO's done. When you look at what they were doing in 2015, it was 115 jobs, and 2015 was 355, 16 was 114. But now to see numbers for the city of Rochester, where so far to date, they have attracted 826 jobs to the city of Rochester. Last year in 19, they attracted 621 jobs to the city of Rochester. This is tremendous, and I find it quite impressive. I don't know anybody else, and if this trend can continue, I think this is wonderful, and I think they need to do a better job of letting folks know what they're doing, because I find it impressive.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments or questions?
I think basically it's a no-brainer.
Okay, Tom, you had your hand up. You're muted though, please.
Just for clarification, has Greater Rochester Enterprise, has the city been on the board of Greater Rochester Enterprise before?
Yes, the city of Rochester has had a seat on the board of GRE since it was created.
The city of Rochester, and is that only because the city of Rochester paid, gave some money to GRE?
Yes, that's also correct.
Okay. So now that the city is not going to give any money, the city doesn't have a place at the table as such.
Well, in the proposal that we received, the city does have a place at the table. So
that's the mayor, but
correct, the mayor or whoever the mayor designates.
She's getting, as DT says, she's getting a free ride to the table.
Yes,
and
that would be correct.
And so there's really the mayor and Bayet. There's two people on the board of GRE. Yes. From the two entities.
From REDCO and one from the city.
Yeah. And the city has been consistently paying like around $50,000 until now.
Yeah, I believe that amount has been consistent for a great many years, if not.
And one last question: where does this $50,000 come from in our budget?
It's an expenditure like every other expenditure.
Yeah.
It's part of. I don't know what line it's under. Perhaps Bay or Maria know. I mean, if we have a professional services or whatever line it would be in, but
we could put this in professional services. This wasn't part of the budget only because it was a separate ask that I felt like it needed to come to light. One, because of the amount of money, two, what was being asked. So this wasn't inserted into professional services. I think we had finished a lot of the budget before we got this, but I just, I thought this should be a discussion first with the board and not just professional service agreement that we could have made. But I didn't chose not to in this case.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, DT?
So, the city was paying the 50,000. It wasn't REDCO before, or was it the old REDCO?
No, it was the city.
Okay. So in the past, city had 2 seats on the board.
Excuse me?
In the past, the city had 2 seats on the board, or REDCO got a free ride?
Well, me and whoever was the commissioner.
So you were working for the city at the time, so you were representing the city. So the city had 2 seats. Now
no, I don't think that's accurate to say they had 2 seats. It was just one.
Oh, just one.
Yeah.
Which they paid for.
Right.
And now we're paying for one for REDCO and adding one for the city.
I think that's correct, yes. And keeping in mind that in the past, Bea, in his role as commissioner, was also the president of REDCO, so he was essentially wearing 2 hats in the room.
Yeah, but if the city was paying for it, he was probably on there because he was the commissioner.
Correct. Correct.
Bea, this is Keith. I think there's probably, again, we're transitioning and we're starting and this probably is the right place for this to land. Maybe I'm a little uncomfortable with how we landed here and especially with the, the late add to the budget or just, is there anything else that the city typically invested into these agencies that we might be asked to pick up? We probably are the most appropriate role to be on GRE, the most appropriate representation. So I think we just want to know if there's any, I want to know, is there anything else that's transitioning in or out of it that we should be both staffing for, budgeting for, and all those things. We should get those kind of on the table now, given our REDCO's role in lieu of the city.
I can answer that partially, Keith. There were 2 items that we had traditionally paid for out of my city budget. One of those things is this item right here, GRE, $50,000. The other is NextCore, and that was $20,000. We've traditionally paid $20,000 a year to NextCore for their to help support their activities in their business incubator in the Sibley building. As a result of that, I have, and the person who's been in my position prior to me, have had a seat at the NextCore board table. So that has continued, but both of these items, the GRE item and the NextCore item, were both removed from my budget. So the $50,000 for GRE was requested of REDCO. The $20,000 for NextCore, I'm not sure where that is right now. It's not in my budget and it's not in REDCO's budget. So.
I have a
Sergio?
comment. Yes, I'm very familiar with GRE. Our company has been from the very beginning, and we are familiar with them. I think our contribution is, I don't know if it's $5,000 or $7,500 a year, and we've been supporting the organization. I think it's a good thing for REDCO to be at. Just a comment. I mean, having a seat on the board is good, and I'm glad that Bea will be at the board. But I think if we want to money, I think it has to be more than that. Being at the board is not enough. I think Bea, and I'm sure he will do that. He should meet regularly with Matt Herbert, and there's a lot of different people that pull Matt in very different directions. Their focus is to really promote the city as a destination for businesses. So I think I'm not saying that Bea will not doing that without me mentioning it, but I think it's more than sitting on the board. And yeah, this is a great guy. I worked with him before in other different places. He's a great guy, just like everybody else. There's a lot of interest that he has to listen to. So we want the city to benefit from this and make our money worth. I think we need to be very, very proactive. And if you look at the list of companies and projects that GRE takes credit for, in some cases, there are other agencies, other in the county that you ask, and they will tell you that they are the ones who can take the credit for it. So I think it's good for us to be there. I think we should support it, but I think it's going to require us to be very active with them.
Okay,
And that's,
thank you.
yeah, that's definitely something that's been our relationship. I would say since Matt has been in leadership there, we meet once a month. But even the short time that Tracy has been here, he's probably received, 10 or more calls from GRE to meet about a particular business coming into the city. So the relationship is pretty, and same thing on Dana's end. So the relationship is pretty fluid. Few years, well, a few years back, before Live Tiles get here, they're down in High Falls. I traveled to New York City with them, and also too, we jointly went to the Game Developers Conference. That was that not this past, but last year, to recruit technology companies to the city. So there's a lot of collaboration. But I am going to say that the relationship is a lot better now. Just that's Matt's style. So I don't know if Dana, you wanted to add, but we're constantly getting something from them. In the last few years since he's been the CEO.
Yes, I would agree with that, Bea. You're 100% correct. I mean, I remember, 2, possibly 3 CEOs prior where I think there was a much more regional focus, and so there tended to be a greater push for businesses outside of the city, and again, possibly just because of the changing dynamics of businesses and really wanting to get away from suburban office parks, and possibly, I think in large part because, Matt has run things a little bit differently. We have had a much better relationship, and I agree with you 100%. We are regularly getting requests from GRE for businesses that are looking. So they're out there. They're recruiting businesses. They're getting Rochester on the map for site selectors, and I think they've done a good job. So are there other questions or thoughts about this before we vote on going forward?
Dana, this is Keith. I feel like we need to amend the budget that we might be talking about in a little bit, because this is a substantial expense. For me, it does highlight, and this is an observation, I think articulating inside of our, I think this puts the urgency on to Bea and staff to what is the connection between this and our strategic plan, and not for nothing, how do we make this, how do we pay for this investment? What will be the return? We do need to eventually build it. The job development is important, but eventually, are these going to turn into interest-bearing loans? Are those, where's the revenue associated with the work that GRE does for REDCO? We do have to think about that as our own sustaining organization. I'm not suggesting that answer is now, but I think we have to set that tone that if we approve this, this is not an annuity in perpetuity. I think staff of REDCO has to connect the operating plan with the budget and the strategic plan with some urgency.
Right.
For us to pull all these pieces together.
I also think we have to also be cognizant of the fact that those businesses want to come to the city. They were going to come whether we invested $50,000 or not. So I think Keith's point is excellent in terms of, what's the ROI for REDCO. Because right now, they're just going to get a freebie from us.
Right, right. So the point that Keith made is really critical, and that is when one of these businesses decides to come to Rochester. I think the latest one on the list here, it's Life Cycle, but it's one of the newest businesses, and they do lithium battery recycling. They don't have any facilities currently in New York, but they're going to build a hub for all of their battery recycling at Eastman Business Park. So what we would, I think, want to do is, as part of that, since they've made the decision to come here, we would need to figure out exactly as Keith said, how can we be involved in that deal so that we get some revenue from a loan or whatever financing might be necessary, so that in addition to the 23 new jobs that they're proposing, there's also some financial opportunity for REDCO in here, and so I think part of our process has to be looking at these companies as they're making those decisions and figuring out how we can leverage that decision once it's made into revenue for REDCO.
Maybe we either get a flat fee for every business that comes or a percentage of the deal. So maybe we should have those conversations before we approve this. Have those conversations with Matt, Dana. Bea.
Yeah, the other question I guess I had, and again, the question was asked earlier, so have we been paying this all along? And again, to the best of my knowledge, I'm thinking back to approving these payments over time. It's pretty much always been 50,000. Now I know that costs have increased, but we also know that there is a tremendous amount of financial pressure on everybody these days, and I don't know if we actually had a conversation. Bea, you would probably know this better than I, with Matt saying, this is going to transfer from the city to REDCO. The city has, this kind of pocketbook, and REDCO has this kind of pocketbook. Can we do something other than the $50,000? So again, I can't recall if that was a discussion we had with them or not.
Yeah, and I think the goal today was to present Matt's proposal. Okay. And whatever direction was given from the board, just, for me to go back and have that conversation. But no, I haven't had that with them.
Okay, so given that, then I guess we don't really have to vote to approve this today. What we need to do is give you some direction that would allow you to have a conversation with Matt. For example, if there are 2 seats here and one's for the mayor and one's for REDCO, and REDCO is going to pay the full bill, then perhaps we would want to negotiate for 1 seat for REDCO at a lower amount, and if the city decides they need a seat, then we have to figure out how to pay for it.
It almost looks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It almost looks like because the city, their budget is under pressure, they just shunted this over to us.
I'm not going to say that, but okay.
I mean, but there has to be, I think, Keith is right on the money. There has to be some return for us, right, over and above the fact that they're attracting jobs to the city because that's their job.
Right.
So if we're going to give them money, we got to get more than just sitting on the board.
That's a good point. Since we're not going to have to vote on this today, there's 2 things. One, going back to Matt and possibly negotiating for the 1 seat, how much does 1 seat cost us? This, secondly, is to, as you said, Dana, is to push back, maybe that's the wrong word at this point, on the mayor and the city. Because I'm really I think I'm a little concerned now that how many more things might the mayor have in her back pocket that says, oh, that's going to be REDCO. Oh, that's going to be REDCO. That's going to be REDCO. We got to be upfront about all this stuff, because here we are, we're putting together a budget and it's very fluid. We're just, this is our first year. So I think there has to be a really good, open dialogue with the mayor on this whole thing in terms of what does she have in mind in terms of what REDCO is going to take on. I've been concerned about that in terms of staff and other things. This is probably small change compared to maybe what other things could be coming our way. But yeah, so I just say let's put it off. Let's go have some more conversation.
Well, you raised something too, Tom, because we're not getting money from the city. We've taken what REDCO had, but that wasn't like the city
Yeah.
investing money in us out of their budget.
Right.
Okay, well, I think, do you feel at this point, Bea, that you have a sense of what we would want to go back to Matt with and kind of where the board is?
Yes, I'm clear.
Okay. All right. So we will ask Bea to have a conversation with Matt and then come back to us at an upcoming meeting with more detail on this. But to Tom's point about having a conversation, Tom, would you want to have the mayor come into a future meeting and we can discuss, what her bigger, I mean, to the extent that she has a bigger vision for what kinds of things might end up with REDCO, do we want to have that conversation, or would we be better served by coming up with some questions that we could direct to her? What would?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it would be good to have a conversation with the mayor. However, let's get, I think the bylaws need to get done and the strategic plan. So we're really clear about what our future is.
Yeah.
And then I think we're in a better position to have the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I like that, because I was actually thinking at some point when we finish our strategic plan, we're going to need to present that to her anyway, just so she knows where we've decided we're going. And then ideally, where we're going and where she would like to see us go are similar. But if it turns out that we're going in different directions, then it would be helpful for us to know that as after we've pretty well finished our strategic plan, but perhaps before we adopt it, just so that if we are actually diverging, that we don't have to undo things.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Why don't we move on then? We have about a half hour left, and we have 3 items to get through. So, DT, you have the bylaw amendments, which you have done a masterful job of pulling together, getting out to everybody, having both the highlighted version and the clean version. I'm hoping that people have taken the time to read through this. I really am very happy with what we've ended up with, but would you like to talk to us a little bit about that, DT? You're muted.
The committee worked hard on this. We got feedback from a number of the board members. A number of board members were satisfied with what we had. We had some revisions based on input from Matt and Tom. Who else was it? Oh, Keith. I'm sorry, Keith. And I think several along the way, we've had different input from different board members. So we've incorporated all that. We've sent it back and forth. And I think with the last iteration, I think the board members were satisfied with what we put together. And so I would like to call for a vote on the amendment.
I'll
On the
second.
resolution.
Law department to review the bylaws before they're adopted?
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. What was the question, Tim?
Tim wanted to know, should he review it before we adopted it?
Oh, okay. You didn't review them, Tim?
No, we've asked for them a couple times, but we've never received them, and it's
We've
our
never
advice
received.
to you that we do receive them prior to
You
adoption.
haven't sent me anything asking me for anything, Tim.
Yes, I've talked to Bea and Dana a number of
You have
times.
not sent me anything asking
And I
for
will
the bylaws.
deal through Dana and Bea.
Okay, so we have a revised version of the bylaws, and there was a motion made to adopt them, and I thought I heard someone, Tom seconded that, and Sharon has also seconded that. And then we had a question from Tim about whether or not we would like to have a legal review prior to adoption. Are people willing to go ahead and approve them at this point, or would we like to take Tim up on his offer?
Just a question, not to take away anything from the work that has been done, but I think a review by Tim, I don't think that will hurt anything. I don't know exactly the background of what may happen or not happen, but I don't see that as a problem. Okay, but whatever the majority decides, I'll go along with it.
I'm just
Okay.
curious. I'm
Tom,
just
go ahead.
curious about this process here. Tim says that he had talked with you, Dana, and Bea about having the law department review it, or him review it. This is the first time I've heard that. The chair of the committee didn't hear that. So either of you have any thoughts on this as to what the situation is?
Thoughts on what specifically?
About this process that Tim says that he had talked with you and Dana about having the law department look at it before it's adopted, and he was going through you and not any members of the committee.
Right. I definitely brought that up to DT, but I wasn't managing whether she
No, but
sent
you
it
never
to
told me
Tim.
anything about Tim. You just told me to send a copy to the mayor.
Right. But I did indicate Tim. But I'm not managing that process.
And Tim certainly knows that we have had a bylaws committee.
I think it's a mistake to adopt these bylaws without a legal review.
Well, if we're going to get a legal review, this goes back to the other question we've had a number of times, and maybe we should deal with it now or quickly at some point. And that is, who are we going to have as the legal reviewer? Is this still going to be within the city's legal system, or are we going to have our own legal staff? And I think we need
independent.
to deal with it.
Yeah, I think we should have an independent review if we need a legal review.
Is that cost covered in the projected budget that we have going forward?
I think we can get a pro bono review.
So I'll just add, I think it feels like there's two things here. One's communication, and I'll just, as a volunteer board member, my expectation would be that bylaws are always always reviewed by legal in concert, and getting caught up in the communication, that's for, I think, Bea to manage. And it's disappointing, candidly, that we're having the conversation around who the email chair. I'd recommend it. And Mike, to your point, we do have legal fees in a budget. We are flat-footed in terms of having to do this quickly. We brought up the fact that we might get an independent counsel. We haven't done anything about it. So I think Tim is I would consider Tim to be our counsel right now, in the absence of anybody else. We just asked him for recommendations on the Sizinger deal. So he's acting in that capacity anyway. I think we continue to use him in that capacity. If there's an issue, then Bea and Dana should fix that. As a board member, I'm expecting a legal review of this.
I agree with Keith's point. we have somebody who can help us right here, knows us from before and after. I mean, I think to go outside, I don't think it's necessary at this point. But if there's a bigger issue that I don't know about, let's put it on the table and discuss it. But that's the way I feel about it, based on what I hear.
So we'd be proposing to delay the vote on the bylaws until the next meeting?
Assuming that a legal review can be completed before the next meeting, yes, I think that's what I'm hearing.
I'm not suggesting it's a calendar issue. I think it's a review issue. When that's ready, we can do this. But I think there has to be urgency around this. We're 6 months in and we don't have bylaws.
Well, we do have bylaws. We just don't have bylaws that we believe are sufficient. But yes.
So if we could do a special board meeting to pass the amendment, the resolution, before the next board meeting. That means that if we got a legal review, it needs to be done right away rather than drag out.
Well, I'm okay with Mike's proposal that we approve it at the next board meeting. I don't think that's an issue. My comment was that we can only say we'll approve it at the next board meeting if we believe that the review will be completed by then. That was my only.
Well, it shouldn't take that long to do a review.
Well, Tim, since you or someone on your team,
not the one doing it. Yeah, I can do it before the next board meeting.
Also, Dana, just as a matter of information for the board, I'm anticipating we had scheduled, at least I and the committee, the strategic planning committee, felt we were going to, we're done with the plan, and we had scheduled that we would come in September for the board to deal with the strategic plan. So if we're putting both the bylaws and the strategic plan in the same, something's going to have to give. So I think maybe not. Maybe it's everything's fine and in terms of the legal review. But
well, I think that's a question for Tim. Tim, can you turn it around before the meeting?
Sure. So, I can. Well, I won't present it at the meeting. I'll present it, whatever, a week or two before the board meeting, so people will have a chance to review any changes that we propose.
Okay. One other thing, I'm a big process person, and we've been spending months on the bylaws, and there's been a lot of volunteer time and effort into this thing. I don't want to have a situation where all of that is kind of stuff to maybe Tim will find nothing wrong with it. On the other hand, I don't want to have a situation where legal comes in and says, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this. And we're starting all over again. We started with a bylaws that, as I understand it, was done by law department, and basically we are changing it. And so I think we may have a conflict of interest here if we have the same law department look at the new bylaws, that some of which we're saying we don't want. So I don't know what you want to do, Dana. This is a toughie, but I'm sorry we've gotten to this point.
Well, our review doesn't get into policies and procedure. It gets into compliance with New York law. So
there's nothing here that's out of compliance.
Let me finish, please. To the extent that we have an objection, I can cite the statute or the law or the court decision that says this provision is not appropriate. So I can cite, we're not getting into a lot of things, but you may, we ran into problems on the open public meetings law, and you tried to set up a meeting that was not permitted under New York law. So bylaws, you keep interrupting me. Please let me finish. So to the extent that your bylaws call for procedures that are not authorized under New York law, we can simply point that out. Otherwise, we're not going to get into any revisions in policies. That's the board's prerogative.
All right.
Right.
So nothing that we did in the revisions touches on New York State laws regarding that. The thing about public meetings It's not a bylaws issue. So that has nothing to do with the
I
bylaws.
I wouldn't say that at all.
Hearing. No, it had nothing to do with the bylaws. We didn't have anything in the bylaws about public meetings, or that we wanted to have a meeting that apparently didn't conform with New York State. It had nothing to do with the bylaws. The red herring.
I guess I can't say that till after I see the bylaws.
Okay, so you, I believe, have received a copy of the bylaws, Tim, or not?
I never have, despite our conversations, I never have.
Okay, well, I will make sure that you get a copy of the bylaws immediately following this meeting, and if you can provide us with some feedback.
Maria, was it in the package?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I sent it out to the board members. Oh, you and Dana have copies.
Yes, I have a copy right here.
Can I ask Dana, please, if Tim can turn this around pretty quickly, can we, at least would you consider at some point when we get this, that we look at possibly having a special meeting to address the bylaws, and then we have more time in September to look at the strategic plan?
Yeah, I would absolutely support that, Tom. I think, absent this discussion that we've just had about legal, I believe that we were probably this close to actually approving the bylaws. So again, unless something comes back from Tim's look at this that says, you guys have completely violated New York state law here, which I don't anticipate, then I think we could certainly approve the bylaws, either a special meeting or perhaps by an email vote. So
thank you.
We will do that, yes. Okay, let's move on then to Tom giving us a strategic plan update, and then we still have to have the budget discussion. So,
all right. Well, I pretty much
done that, right?
Yeah, we do have the committee's done just a wonderful, absolutely great job on this. It's been very difficult challenge because we can't all get together in the same room. So we've done this in quite an iterative process back and forth, but we now have a strategic plan. We've had staff involvement with it, board involvement with it, and we're done with the draft. I think this is like draft 6 that we have, and we're prepared. Maria's going to tidy it up for us, format it, and give us a nice cover, so that you will have it a good 2 weeks ahead of the next board meeting, so you can curl up in bed with it and just enjoy reading it and all that. And so anyway, yeah, this has been a lot of hard work, but it's also been fun. So I hope we'll have a good discussion next meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you for all your hard work on this, Tom. I know, as you said, you're a process person, which is why you got the job. So thank you for doing so well. So we now have the last item on the agenda, which is the budget. And I'm sorry, I lost my note here. So Keith, I think you were going to present the budget.
Yeah.
And then there was a question about whether or not for some portion of this we might need to go into executive session. So if you could start with anything that would not require executive session, we'd appreciate that. And then if we get to the point where we believe that an executive session is warranted, then any board member has the opportunity to make a motion that we go into executive session and give us a reason for that. And someone will second that, ideally, and if someone makes that motion and seconds it, then we'll vote, and assuming that there's a majority vote, then we will go into executive session. At that point, All non-board members would be excused, and we would continue from there. So,
How do you,
I'm sorry.
so if that happens, just one more process. Maria, are you able to give the controls to Dana if we were to leave and then come back?
I think so, but I'm scared to try it right now because I don't know if it would stop the meeting, but I think I can make
No, it won't. There's by a person's name, you can get a menu down and it'll say, make that person host.
Okay.
And you turn host over to them. And the reason we would go into executive session is if it's a personnel matter, a matter of someone, a legal matter with, that would cause a problem with someone breaking the law or something like that. They're like
And
three items.
and if I do that, I stop YouTube and everything, right?
Yes,
Yes.
everything stops.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
All right. Keith?
Yep.
Thanks.
So, so part of the reason of that discussion, so yeah, I think Maria sent out, you know, the budget right now, I'll skip my checklist. And the budget right now is $1.6 million. $1 million of that is tied to personnel. And if anybody is looking for further detail, we can go to executive session, or we can make that information available. So that might, whether that negates the need, if someone's looking for more detail on the breakdown of that, that was where the idea behind executive session came up. But overall, just to let everybody know, you know, over the last few months, we've been, myself, Maria, Bea, and Dana have had a number of conversations focused on next year's budget, with as much that we knew and as much that we anticipate fitting into both our operating plan and our strategic plan. And I thought Maria did a nice job summarizing the detail behind some of these line items and categorizing them. You know, in terms of the budget, it is built around first year, getting up and running. It is candidly a hybrid between a cash budget and an accrual budget. You might not going forward see things like office furniture in a operating budget, but I think this is helpful to all of us to know where our cash position is, and also gives Bea and Maria an opportunity to plan around the budget. I was asked for, you know, this is an expense budget. The revenue right now for REDCO is not funding this budget. That's again where I think it's very important with some urgency for us to adopt the strategic plan, have Bea and staff put together the operating plan to support that, and ultimately support this budget of $1.6 million with offsetting revenue. The budget will be funded right now on REDCO reserves, which were built from transfers from the city, as well as Mel's Griot and basically cash reserves. Pretty typical in the first year of operation, but revenue does need to catch up with this budget.
Keith, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How many employees do we have, REDCO?
Yeah, so this budget is built around 8 positions. 5 of them are staffed currently, and 3 positions are open. And Bea, you might speak to what that staffing might be, but that's what this budget is built off of. Sure. And that's the executive session part. We do have, not only the titles are on that additional information tab that you have with the budget, but we do have a breakdown of those employee salaries, but did not, again, those can be shared inside of executive session.
Right. So right now we have myself, Finance Director, Senior VP of Business Development, Tracy, Small Business Associate Bilingual, Small Business Associate, and we have a Marketing Director starting Monday, and we're interviewing for Executive Assistant, and we have not started interviewing yet for Development Director, but we will soon.
So taking a look at the, and if anyone has any other questions, please feel free. But But taking a look at the first category of business expenses, again, that's where we had some certainty around our auditing, our audit work being done by Fried Maxick. The other due diligence for laws and loan fees, that is an estimate based on anticipated volume and deals. The other big item in there, marketing and advertising, I think again that's an anticipation of supporting execution of the strategic plan. And then professional services, again, I think when we talk about CRM, there is an investment being made in initial. These represent initial investments versus ongoing costs. And Bea, if you can fill in the blanks in terms of the underwriting contracts and CRM contract, that could be helpful.
We just recently purchased CRM, Microsoft Dynamics. That's definitely needed in this office to manage, not only want to manage our projects, but actually manage the workflow throughout our organization. We didn't have that with the city, and it really has taken a long time to get information. So it's definitely working to help our operation. We pay our underwriter out of that. Ms. Jones underwrites all of our projects. Probably because of RRF, we'll have to bring another person on. And this will cover any other professional service contracts that we might anticipate going forward.
I think that's what this represents, a blend of outsourcing and the anticipated positions. And those are the things that we'll have to assess, is the outsourcing of underwriting. Should that be in-house or outsourced? Those are things that will, again, develop over time. But those are the things that fit in the professional services. And again, that CRM is really the first time investment. Building expenses, I feel are pretty straightforward. Again, that 75,000 in a lot of budgets might not be there as a capital expense, but it's one way to manage the cash flow this year. The bulk of most everybody's budget sits in payroll and development expenses. So when you add salaries and fringe together, you're at about $900,000 for those current staff and anticipated staff building up. The CCSI is an outsourced HR, if that's the best way to put it, Bay. You can tell me what they do for us every day for those funds, but they're the company that will basically, since we are no longer using city for payroll and the appropriate work that gets done there, CCSI has stepped in to do that for us. And again, Barry, you can fill in the blanks and specifics there.
Yes, they're handling all of our HR needs, our payroll, also our benefits, health insurance, making sure we're compliant, keeping up with sexual harassment training or any required trainings that the federal government requires or the state. And then they have their own list of trainings that are just mandatory. Also legal when it deals with human resources. They're handling all of that for us.
And if everybody remembers, I believe they won a RFP process early on in the development of REDCO.
Right.
Again, I believe, Bea wanted to build in things like training, travel, conferences, and again, we're looking for support for those as we will see the strategic plan in September, and this is the best, not best guess. This is the thought behind how we're going to execute around the strategic plan, and making sure we make dollars available for people for employees to get training and go to the appropriate conferences. And I guess this is, there's some detail behind all of this, and that the budget there was not a budget for specifically for GRE. We did build in some miscellaneous expenses. So the budget does come to 1.6 million. I think there was an email floating around. I think there's a big part of that is known, but there are some things that are anticipated for us to grow into, I guess, throughout the year, and probably conservative estimates that might be on the high side in terms of training travel. Again, those of us around the table know our training travel and conference budgets are probably underutilized now, given COVID and all of those things. But you just don't know what the future might hold in this budget year.
I don't want to go through like the salary line items, but just quick math. You take out the benefits, you divide it by 800 by 8, you got an average salary of $100,000. Just, seems high to me, but that's my only input.
When you took out salary,
if you take the salary line, which is $1 million, you take out the approximate 200,000 for benefits, and so you get 800,000 in salary. You have 8 positions. Just divide 8 by 800,000. You got an average salary of $100,000. That seems high to me, but I don't know what they are. At some point we probably should just dig into those.
Yeah, I've got the breakdown of that, and I'll just do the average real quick. It's a little lower than that, but yeah. And again, we can go into executive session and detail each of those roles, or if allowed, we can share this. We'll figure out a way to do this on it. Well, there are no names here, so I don't even think I need to do it on a secure email. We can circulate that to the board and field questions rather than go into an executive session.
I'd like to jump in here because I was the one had a number of questions. I'm not looking to go into executive session at this point. I know we're brand new. I do think, though, that we need to get our committee structure moving. If there is to be for example, a governance committee and/or an executive committee, then those particular committees, one of them needs to be charged with looking at salaries and how we came to that. Have they been benchmarked against local ones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So as soon as, I don't know when we can get for example, if that's going to be, Dana, if that's going to be the governance committee that has that responsibility or the executive committee. But I do think we need to move ahead and fill out these committees that we have, get them to work.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Tom. And obviously, we're trying to fly the plane and build the engine and put wheels on it at the same time, and that's a little challenge. But the committee structure is all part of the bylaws, and so the bylaws define what the committees are, and once we have approved bylaws, then we know what the committees are, and then we can assign members to those committees. Obviously, the ones that we know already, like executive and finance, I think we have members for, but for some of the other ones like governance, I don't know that we've actually gotten far enough to assign members to it, but we certainly will do that.
Sharon,
I like, Tom, what you said. It needs the correct vetting process. I don't think that's something like we need to go into executive session on or not. Just, I think, have they been benchmarked? What are the titles, all of that. And if this is right now a placeholder and we're going to get more detail with that, I'm absolutely fine with it.
Sure. And just so I think based on initial budget conversations, I believe we are using CCSI to provide some benchmarking for us on these. We did engage, and we just don't have the results yet. And when I did average out with anticipated right, it's $85,000, which again, I think if the detail is shared, you will see where that average comes out to.
Thank you. I have to go because I have a 1:30 call and I need the 3 minutes. So I'm going to say goodbye.
Let me just say this, Sharon,
Yes.
before you leave, just real quick. Yeah, I definitely believe there needs to be a governance committee, finance committee, to make decisions like that. But myself and DT met with a number of people in the community within and out. The chamber was one of them. We met with the director of human resources there, and she shared with us best benchmarks throughout the country for economic development. So, and we're, probably, I think Keith said averaging around $80-some thousand.
Yeah, which is my wrong math. So that's a big difference, 100 to 85. So I was just doing it quickly. No, thank you. I really appreciate that. Just
thanks.
Okay, Mike has a question.
So before we go much further, how many board members do we need to vote on the budget? Do we still have quorum if Ms. Napier leaves?
Well, with any meeting, once the quorum is established, regardless of how many people remain, the quorum remains. So.
I want to make sure, okay. And is it our, before we go much further, is it still our intent to vote on the budget today as presented? Anybody got any major, I guess, we've all had it, we've had a chance to look at it. Has anybody got any major problems, any issues that they want addressed? Or are we pretty much good for this?
I don't have any.
We've had a presentation. I think Keith went through it very well. I mean, it is what it is. Are there places that we could tighten the belt a little bit? Possibly, but we're at a point where if someone decides to make a motion to approve the budget, then we could, and somebody seconds it, then we will either have more questions or we could vote to approve it. So.
Keith,
Or turn it down.
Keith, you want to move?
If I can move it, I will move it. As the treasurer, if I'm okay moving the budget, I'm looking for a second, then I so move.
Okay. I got the second.
Yeah, DT had her she was waving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Sharon has to go. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a vote that you're willing to cast prior to leaving?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Okay. All right. So it's been moved and seconded that the budget as presented by our treasurer should be approved. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the budget is approved, and thank you. That's our last item on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman. Oh,
yes,
go
sir.
ahead. Go ahead,
go
Tom.
ahead.
Tom was first.
Okay, Tom, sorry.
Just thank Keith.
Oh.
No. I think, Tom, I thank you and thanks for the strategic plan, because I've said it a few times and Dana's getting tired of me saying it. Now it's time to kind of connect the strategic plan with the budget and then ultimately the operating plan.
Right.
Make it all happen.
Right. And the thing that I keep saying is, and we need a revenue plan. So I'll keep saying that, because expenses without revenue equals going out of business. we don't want to go out of business. So. Okay. Any other comments for the?
I just have one question.
So I'm sorry. We voted on the budget, just to be clear. So I asked for all in favor. I asked for any opposed. I did not ask for abstentions. I apologize for that. When I'm watching people, when I see that we have everybody accounted for, I generally don't ask for that. But in the event that somebody did want to abstain, were there any abstentions on the vote? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Now that it's approved, can I go ahead and upload it to the ABO because it's due?
Yes, that was our goal, to try to get this approved so that you can finish the ABO report. So yes, it's official. You're welcome. Okay, anybody else? Anything?
Yeah, just two more things we had. I just wanted to let everyone know we had an announcement the other day Tuesday for the Revitalize Rochester. So majority of our focus will be on that grant and loan from the banks. We have the business enhancement program. There's a program with Own Rochester, but that will occupy the majority of our work along our corridors. So that was announced Tuesday. We have a number of workshops that will start next week, and the staff will be hitting the streets with information about Revitalize Rochester. The other thing I had actually is not me. It's Matt. Matt had some information to share that he emailed me this morning, some good information about our city.
I'm gonna put a link in the chat box for folks to see the product. But yesterday, Rochester was named an All-America City by the National Civic League, which is National Civic League organizes this annually, and it's focused on really connecting civic engagement to challenging issues within a community. And so we were recognized, focused on enhancing health and well-being through civic engagement. And as we think about the work of GRE and others, it's just another feather that we can put in the cap of Rochester to promote Rochester as a place that's really on the upswing. The link that I sent you has the highlights of the 3 projects that were elevated as part of the process. That included the high blood pressure collaborative that was done a few years ago, and also the revitalization of the El Camino neighborhood that is continuing, with La Marqueta being almost ready to be completed. And then the other project was around the school climate work that's been happening on reducing suspensions and increasing graduation. But all of this allows us to then now say that Rochester has been named by the National Civic League as an All-America City. It comes with a lot of recognition. There's even the ability to put up placards on city signs and all kinds of things over the next several years, and use that as an additional incentive to show businesses who are considering Rochester that we're doing a lot of good work here locally.
Yep. Thank you. That's great to hear. Tom, I think you and I were on the team the last time we were named an All-America City back in 1998, right? There were a number of us that we were happy to be on a team that received that designation, and we actually never took for most of the signs, we never took that off. So it's good to know that they're actually official again. But thank you for mentioning that, Matt.
And Wade was on the team this year and channeled 1980 and 1998 and brought all that energy with us to be successful.
Yeah, that's right. Wade was with us too, and a number of other people. So thanks. Anything else?
I just want to thank Tom for all of the work that he's done. So Tom, when do you sleep? Because it seems like you're constantly working. I get tired just looking at you sometimes. I'm just like, this guy don't rest. You shared with us the most recent report, Hard Facts, Updated Race and Ethnicity in the 9-county Greater Rochester area. I hate to end on a downer, but when you review the elements that are in here that I think we should be holding close as guiding principles as we do this work, not only are minorities catching hell in the 9-county region, but minorities in the 9-county region are underperforming minorities nationally. So it's not just that it's bad here, it's worse here than it is overall everywhere else. So that is a challenge. I would just encourage us to all keep in our head as we do all of the work that we do. Black and brown folks is catching it in Rochester. And that's the challenge. And one of the ending points that's made in the report is that if we could just get black and brown folks up to the national level, you would move 22,000 people out of poverty. So we're still working on that equity level of getting up to comparable to our white communities, but just moving up to where we should be nationally is a tremendous lift. So not to end on a downer, but this is the battle before us. We're doing the work, but I just wanted to thank Tom for sharing that with us, because Every time I look at this thing, I go off and cry. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think that puts us in the unique position to move the needle. We just have to be intentional about, our products and who's receiving them. So working in the corridors, attracting businesses along our corridor so folks can walk to work, and helping create more entrepreneurs in our community. That, to me, that's going to be part of the key. Along with working with our educational institutions. And when I say that, I'm talking about the colleges, but more particularly, I'm talking about our K through 12.
The other thing is, I think people don't understand, if we get people out of poverty, the tremendous boost it will give to the economy overall.
Absolutely.
Everybody benefits.
Right.
Right. So instead of a down note, Mike, it's really an up note. We know where we have to go, and now we just have to start walking. And as was said, right? If you can't fly, drive. If you can't drive, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But just keep moving forward. So
Amen.
we got to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. All right.
Dana,
Yes, ma'am.
you never closed the meeting.
I never closed which meeting?
You never did
Oh.
an adjournment.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do I just say 137?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you.
Okay, yeah, when we get late past the closing time, I get antsy because people start dropping off.
Yeah,
And
I understand.
I kept seeing people disappearing, and I just like, oh my gosh.